and we are live. We are recording this show, and I'm joined by Brandon Hendrickson. I'm Salvador Cordova. I run a few channels on the internet. This one's being recorded through the Evidence Reasons Academy, which is my academic channel, and we explore really nerd type topics. So this is just a little opening to introduce myself to my audience, but I'm here actually to be of service to Brandon, who wanted to get together and just talk. And so I will actually, beyond this opening remark, I'm at his service. So take it away, Brandon. You got the lead.
Sal, you are really a nice guy. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so you and I met each other on a subreddit, Debate Evolution, where I was interested in going on and finding kind of trying to get a sense of where the evolution creation debate is now in the 2020s. I am interested in this for a whole bunch of reasons. Feel free to ask me about that. But after many years away from it, I've been on both sides of the debate before, but after many years away from it, I have been interested in getting into it again. I am a science teacher. I run a company called Science is Weird. And this year we are doing a topic on sedimentary geology. It's called The Hills Are Weird, but it's going to be largely about sedimentary geology. And I am in love with geology, and I'm in love with fossils, and I'm in love with dinosaurs and various other things that you can see around here. And I felt like growing up, when I became a young Earth creationist, growing up in middle school, that the quality of the arguments that I was given were garbage. They were terrible, terrible arguments. And I have been surprised, shocked, flummoxed, delighted to, as I've kind of dipped my toes back into this over the last few months, to find that there actually does seem to be a contingent of people in even the young Earth, not just the intelligent design sort of set, right, but the young Earth creationist sets that actually are being honest with the evidence and are admitting where difficulties in their models are, and are actually having like open discussions, debates about like what is our model for flood geology is one that I'm definitely the most interested in. And so I've been getting into your work, but you have a lot of different things. So I would at no point please allow me to misrepresent any of the things that you're doing. But I see you right now as one of the good guys who is fighting the good fight for truth. You're coming at it from what could be uncharitably called a biased perspective, but from another set of convictions, but which I think is great. I have no problem with that at all. And you are operating like seemingly truthfully and honestly and humbly, epistemologically speaking, and all of these things. So first of all, let me say, based on everything that I've seen you do online, thank you for doing the work that you do.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. I do appreciate that. Part of it is I have both undergrad and graduate students approach me, and they'll ask me for my opinion on this and that, and I'll say, look, I may believe this is true, but I don't think we're there evidentially. I do not do you a service to say we have a good case. And this is very different from which we'll get from some of these creationist evangelists. They'll throw up any argument they can to persuade their audience and get donations. And I'm not about that. These students who approach me, some of them end up becoming college professors. One of them I know, 15, 20 years ago, he was in college reading my stuff. He became a CEO of a biotech company. And I'm like, look, I have a responsibility to tell it honestly. I'll say, okay, I'll tell you, I believe this, but I don't have good evidence. And I know in my heart, my conscience would bother me if I said, oh, this is a slam dunk case. And in my heart, and I know it's not. What has happened, though, I've monitored this debate unfold over 45 years. I'm giving away how old I am, but the arguments were garbage, and some of them still are. I'll give you one example. People are saying, like the second law of thermodynamics is argument against evolution. I'm like, please,
Thank
no.
you. Thank you. It's really nice to hear people say that on your side. Thank you very much.
And then I'll ask other creationists, they'll say, yeah, well, we agree with you, Sal. I'm just like, well, okay, so why are we letting people get away with this?
What are the theories? What are the hypotheses that you have as answers to that?
There is, evidence against evolution.
No. Like, why is it that in the young Earth creationist community, it's the most, the voices that get the most airtime are the ones that are making crap up? And I'm not actually alleging that there's frequently conscious line, but like, it's a bunch of people who are not in harmony with what the obvious facts are.
I wish I could tell you. I do not have. There is something, unfortunately, because it is tied to faith culture. Faith culture is driven by a lot of personalities.
Yeah.
This is a total side note, but maybe it's not a total side note. I have been tracking corruption in evangelical churches and churches in general. And people will still donate and follow after people. There was a 500 million, in today's dollars, it'd be $1 billion fraud case involving the Southern Baptist Convention. It's wide open. People have been sent to jail. And I'm like, why are you guys still donating to these organizations? It is. And I'm like, okay, so this is all about theater. It's not about facts. People will start to follow movements because it makes them feel good and they feel like they're a part of something and they want to believe they're donating to a good cause. And so they don't necessarily do their due diligence as far as science. It's an emotional reaction. And so sometimes movements are not necessarily driven by facts. This is true probably across the board, but by kind of emotional commitment and belief in something. We've seen all sorts of bad ideas matriculate through society, not actually driven by facts. So it's not unique to creationism. But I see some of the same parallels. People trying to sell utopia, and they're just charlatans.
Yeah.
So people who are very charismatic and who seem sincere, they can bilk you of a lot of money and they can grab all the attention. And I've seen that happen in churches.
Yeah.
So so we get a lot of people who aren't professional scientists, who don't hardly have any science education, leading the creationist movement. One of them, we could name names. I don't mind if you don't.
I'll let you name names. I will avoid probably doing this.
Okay, Kent Hovind. Kent Hovind is one of them. He's a convicted felon. He has, for someone who represents himself as a Christian minister, to have been married 4 times and divorced 4 times. 4 wives have left him. 1 of his kids left him. And I'm just like, this is in violation of biblical teaching of the qualifications of an elder. This does not bode well. His science also sucks, and I'm embarrassed. His creationist, quote unquote, museum has harbored registered criminals of a certain variety, and this isn't good. So, okay, so why do people flock to this? There are disgraced evangelical pastors like Jim Baker and Jimmy Swaggart, and people just flock to this magnetic personality. And I realized eventually, to my horror, a lot of movements are driven by personality cults, not necessarily by the truth. Whereas someone who has to do this, professionally, where I was an engineer in the aerospace industry, the systems we build, they're life critical. You mess up, people will die. And so there's different standards and there's a different mindset as far as what counts as true, and accepting criticism and being being very skeptical of your own work is just very commonplace, and skeptical of other people's work. that's the culture that I had come from. And then, there are people in the biomedical community and also in the pharmaceutical community where they're held to the same standards, so they carry over that mindset. And some of these are what I call the higher tier creationists.
Yeah.
Those names are hardly ever known.
Yeah.
They spend most of their time actually doing science work, not public outreach and fundraising.
I attracted on the subreddit that we met on more vitriol. I don't think is an overstatement from almost everyone when I published that I had found a young Earth creationist whom I would be happy to support, who's Todd Wood in this situation. I'd read his book, The Challenge. Wait, what's that? What does that mean?
Oh no, I mean, I saw that, and that's why I thought it was funny.
Okay.
He was actually, ironically, voted the #1 creationist by Panel of Evolutionists in 2020.
Oh, really? I'm not.
Yeah, it was on Dapper Dino's YouTube channel. They were voting who's #1. By the way, in 2020, I was voted the #1 YouTube creationist. So this is, and on the panel was Gutsick Gibbon and Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal. So there are two moderators at that forum.
I like those people.
So that being said, they probably won't vote me #1 anymore. But because
what did you do, Sal?
I started I don't know. But I had a falling out with one of the panelists, Dapper Dino, because I worked for John Sanford, and I thought that began an argument. But I was just laughing about you and Todd Wood. And I don't know if you know this about Todd Wood, but his students, he was teaching at a Creationist college. His students, they polled which college had the top scoring students in their knowledge of evolutionary biology. He was #1. His students were #1, which is so funny. His Creationist students understood evolutionary biology better than 99% of the rest of the country.
After this call that we're doing, can you send me that? I would love to look through that. Right, that's a powerful thing. It's a ridiculously powerful thing. That's great. I utterly fell in love with his work, and I haven't read all of his work yet. And this is one of those weird things that one sometimes does in midlife, where one stumbles into these communities where there are so many cool people and so many hucksters, and there are so many like this, like the hurt feelings of this internecine warfare that has been going on for decades, that like you don't even know like what all the gossip is and all this. So I want to be careful about what I say here. And if I say that I really, really love somebody, I mean that earnestly, but I don't know all of their stuff. I was worried when you started laughing when I mentioned his name, that like, oh no, like,
I'll tell you why.
There's something about what Todd Wood that like I shouldn't be really excited about.
Well, there are a lot of creationists, myself included. There's a certain component of young Earth creationists that really despise Todd Wood.
I can imagine that. I think everyone. I cross-posted that I think I found a young Earth creationist I can really support to one of the young Earth creationist subreddits, and he came in for almost as much vitriol in some metrics of that on the young Earth creationist one as he did on the evolutionist one.
Well, just so that I don't forget, if you saw me busily typing, because you had requested this, I'm sending. I Googled it. I sent it to you just now, so you can have access to it. I wrote an article on it some years ago.
Yeah.
So it was important enough a topic that I felt I should, before I forget it. Because if I don't do it now, it's going to go into the pile of things to do, and it might be totally forgotten.
You were saying before, right? Like why is it that faith communities can oftentimes turn into these cults of personality that don't pursue the truth? And right, we could talk for the next 24 minutes that we have left on just that. So let's not, but like, I think we would both say that the answer is somewhere along the lines of, because this is how community, what do I want to say for this? That like, my Catholic friends would say This was the problem with Protestantism from the very beginning. But of course, the same thing happens in sort of different ways inside of Catholic communities, right? Even when with their top-down control. But it's because it's become some sort of tribal thing, that it's become, the evolution creationism is this marker of, do you really believe the deep things? And people will unfellowship you, and in the broadest sense of that, right? And on both sides, if you say the wrong things, if you don't toe the party line. And that obviously is totally understandable from a human nature perspective.
Yeah.
Of course, we would do things like that. But it's absolutely antithetical to how the entire scientific process is supposed to work. That the thing in science is that you're supposed to stay in conversation with people that you disagree with and keep asking for more evidence and more critiques of the things that you do. And I would say that, like, part of my goal in life is to cultivate communities of people who are delighted to do that, and who argue about it really well, right? Like, who steel man the other side, who don't have 100.0 repeating percent conviction of their thing, but like in the proper sort of Bayesian way, like keep continuously update on things. Who, when we have biases, are just open about our biases, whether we maybe support that from some sort of different world of evidence or even not, right? But that we are open about that, and that we actually obviously say truthful, right? Which is, as you've pointed out, one of the problems that can happen sometimes in the young earth creationist side. I'm not saying it doesn't happen also on the other side. But then we even like help each other out to find the holes in our arguments, right? That we work oppositionally together to find truth. I feel like in 2025, Western at least internet culture, right? We have this idea that like everybody is either kumbaya or everybody is posting mean things about each other and being snarky to each other and disregarding each other's observations. And like there is another way. It's not easy to achieve, and it's not easy to keep. But when it happens, when you can actually have people arguing in love with one another, recognizing that they may be wrong and they might need the other person to point out, to help them see something that they can't see. Like, this is one of the sweetest things that a human being can experience. So where do you see that happening these days between our two communities?
One of the problems is, if we deal with like areas where we actually have experiments and where the experiments will actually count, if they're life critical, if your model fails and you realize it's wrong and it costs either property or sadly lives, you have a different standard for truth. Your conscience will, anyone who has a decent conscience, and unfortunately this isn't true of some pharmaceutical companies, but hopefully down the line someone will say, hey, no, we can't keep doing this. This is where truth will, scientific truth will have a high priority. The problem is when we are trying to reconstruct history, it's very hard to conduct experiments that'll be absolutely as convincing. It's like, just a historical example. People were doubting Maxwell's equations of electrodynamics. He was ripped on until Heinrich Hertz made a demonstration that he could generate radio waves and then remotely detect them. People, their jaws dropped. That was like black magic back then. I mean, today.
I described that experiment to my students last year, and it seemed like black magic to me. And I own a radio, right? But there's a spark, and then like on the other side of the room, there was a spark. It's like, oh, ghosts are real now. Yeah.
Oh, see, I'm glad. You see, you will get no argument, and this is what I call the gold standard of science. When you can actually have a repeatable experiment. The problem that we're dealing with is we're trying to reconstruct history, and we don't have, if we were able to get spontaneous life forms to assemble spontaneously, this would be a done deal. It's like, okay, origin of life happens naturally. And then if we could evolve bacteria in a few generations into a human being, there'd be no problem. So what ends up happening is we are making inferences, and there's lots of room for interpretation. And so we were talking about it in terms of like, how can we all agree? I've been in situations where someone was not happy with the experimental results, but they had to cave. It's like, that happened with, and I'm glad you watched that video with me and Gutsick Gibbon talking about nylon eating bacteria. My fiercest critics had to cave and say, Sal's right. And you could tell they're gritting their teeth. And I said, of course I'm right. It's not like you're dealing with anyone who doesn't know his stuff on this topic. And then when the American Society of Microbiology endorsed it, I said, this is, of course, people gritting their teeth that I found this. And it turned out some people of high reputation, they got discredited in the process. One of them sadly passed away, Susumu Ono, who was the pioneer of that idea. But there's still some people alive who are sticking by their story, and they're a little bit embarrassed by it now. I think they've made one of them has made a quiet retraction by the name of Dennis Venema. But Ken Miller, who was in the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial, he wrote a book, and that was a featured claim, and it's been discredited. Even people on his own side now are endorsing the results that I came up with, me and Dr. Sanford. So when you talk about us being happy together, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes the facts aren't what people want to hear, but when they become that obvious, they will concede. We're not quite at that stage with, I think for the origin of life question, every experiment has failed to achieve, despite their claims, to achieve a natural origin of life. And I think that that's going to continue, but just the persistence, it's like, well, how many failed experiments do we need before you quit? And they're characterizing it as progress. And I look at some of these experiments, and James, a lot of other chemists are looking at this and saying, look, this is, there was a term by an origin of life advocate, Clemens Reichert. He said, look, some of these experiments, the success is due to the experimenter. And he called it the hand of God dilemma, because it's the scientist interference that's making the experiment work. And it's not a legitimate representation of what would happen in a prebiotic environment. And so this will go back and forth. So there's this ambiguity that I think is going to be very difficult to resolve. And as long as there are people that have, that are digging their heels in to a particular metaphysical commitment, it's going to be difficult. And some scientists have said, like Robert Shapiro, he wrote The Skeptic's Guide. He was a chemist, and he said, well, all of our experiments could fail, but, he said, some of my colleagues will turn to religion, but, I'm going to just keep trying until I find something. So he had a metaphysical commitment, but at least he was more honest to say that was one of the more honest admissions, that he felt that origin of life had not succeeded, but even if it continues to fail, according to his viewpoint, he was metaphysically committed. I could deal with someone like that.
Yeah, I have no problem with someone like that. I mean, I'm not that person, but I am on his side, right? Of like, which model do we have of the story of the world? But I have no problem with such a person as long as they are admitting that. In the same way that I have no problem with Todd Wood, who, that the reason that he was that my post was met by incredulity on my side, was people would say, like, but he admits that there are these things that the young Earth creationist models have a really hard time answering, that they need to shape up and do better. But then he just goes and he believes that model anyway. That's stupid. That's moronic. That's unscientific. And I feel like, well, like, it might be wrong. It might be right. It might be wrong. But that's a thing that you're allowed to do in science. Science is not like a commitment that everybody has to like suddenly convert to what the mainstream is. there's an argument historically in science that science actually progresses through weird people who are wrong, who, because of their weird wrongness, are able to look at things differently than others and spark breakthroughs, potentially not even, you know, related or barely related to like the thing that they held, but like they can spark the breakthroughs because they're being irrational. There's a really good book. I never have it here. I always want to refer to it here. It's Michael Streven's book, The Knowledge Machine, how science became how irrationality sparked the scientific revolution, or something like that.
Wow, I'm not familiar with it.
It's great. You might love it. You might really love it.
I bet I would.
I'm hearing you say that in the evolution creation debate right now, we do have some instances of people being biased on their sides and arguing together, and actually like potentially people on both sides coming up with new insights because of that. But what we lack is an actual like core contingent of I'm not using that word rightly, some sort of small group of people who are actually doing this, for lack of a better word, of in love, who are actually sort of like committed to like helping each other make the best arguments for their sides. Is that what you're saying?
I probably misheard what you're trying to say, and please forgive me if I'm not representing, but the way I view it is hard science eventually prevails despite our feelings. And as I said, my experience with the nylon eating bacteria, people were eventually conceding, but they still ate my guts. They said Sal was right, but he's a moron. It's like, okay, I'll take that, you know.
I mean, yeah, right. Like this is actually in some ways like the genius of science, is that it allows people who hate one another's guts to actually pursue truth together. This is better than the alternatives. Right? Like in the old days, you just kill each other. I mean, that's maybe a liberal democracy thing, but like, or like you do the thing that I'm drawing from Michael Streven's book again. But he said that like the reason that this is he's a historian of science and a philosopher of science, but like this is still a tendentious, it's still like an out there theory that like why wasn't the scientific revolution sparked in ancient Greece or ancient Rome? And he said it's because these different communities of people doing natural philosophy didn't have like a commitment to staying in conversation together. And so the Stoics would be over here, and the Democritus, the atomists, right, would be over here and kind of doing their things, and the Aristotelians would be over here and doing their sorts of things. But they didn't like, say we have to keep challenging each other and testing each other's models against actual what we agree is counts as evidence. So what we have even now, right, like even as awful as it is still so much better than that. What I'm interested in though is I'm interested in that a lot. It's for that reason, right, that I will not just defend people who I think are wrong, but encourage people who I think are wrong to continue doing science, because I mean lots of good things can happen, but one of them is that they might be able to see things that people on my side are much less likely to be able to spot. But I'm interested in also in like this, like that deeper sort of move of actually having people who work as friends to stay in tight communication and not hate each other's guts while they're helping each other like improve their models.
Well, rather than the creation evolution controversy, how about the creationist versus creationist controversy? There are actually models within the creationist community where I've seen shouting matches at creationist conferences where, for example, they have different flood models.
Yeah.
A lot of hatred. Oh my goodness.
Really?
Yeah.
I've been recently listening to Todd Wood's podcast where, I don't know, a year ago or a couple of years ago, maybe. And they had like two guys on, each with a different flood model, and they specifically say that the reason they didn't just do the normal podcast thing where they have them both on at the same time is because maybe debate, but maybe you'd learn more if had one person at a time, and then the hosts kind of grilled them on that. And I thought like, this seems to be a really good decision on their part, but I had no idea that got so contentious.
Oh, it's awful. There's like 12 different cosmological models to attempt to solve the distant starlight problem. if the speed of light is constant,
Yeah.
and the stars are like a bazillion years away, then there's no way the universe is young. And there've been attempts, and it was shocking to see some of the behavior at Creationist conference of people losing their temper, turning red. I'm just like, dude, this is unbecoming. A guy could be wrong, but there's no reason to be so uncollegial about it. If he's wrong, he's wrong. So that was one. And then the other thing is resolving the heat problem of
Radioactivity.
radioactivity.
Yeah.
And I don't mind saying this publicly. I refused. I was offered a full PhD scholarship to work on nuclear modeling. And I happen to know who the principal investigator was. I said, I will not work with him. I will not work with him because I don't think he's open-minded. I saw him being very polemic against other scientists, and I said, "This is not anything I want to be a part of." And he was actually criticizing something I was a relative expert in, which is Landauer's principle, information theory, and thermodynamics. And I was like, "Look, I'm not going to work with this guy. He's talking about stuff that I'm an expert in, and he's being very contentious." I said, I cannot deal with this. So it's not just the sheer metaphysics of, God versus atheism or creation versus evolution. I'm seeing a lot of personality fights in a community you would think would be more cohesive, but people are again, the personality thing, and then people having a lot of priority for their own ideas. And change is, as I've tried to say, what will change everything is if you have an experiment and you're going to agree upon what your experiment is actually ahead of time, like Maxwell's equations. You're going to settle everything. So at this stage in my life, I am looking at conducting experiments that might help solve that heat problem and the issues with radiometric dating. And it's in a field that I'm the only one in the young Earth creationist community that is familiar with this. But in the solid state physics community, some of this is starting to is very, it's developing. It's called quasi-particle theory. And I'm like, okay, so you guys are invoking all these other mechanisms. I want to be among the first to actually conduct experiments that can show nuclear transformation under low energy conditions. And there have been experiments around the world by people seeking to do nuclear transmutation at much lower energies. And it includes work by the Naval Space Warfare Unit, Army Corps of Engineers, and NASA, National Aerospace, whatever NASA stands for, NASA Glenn Research Center. And so quietly, there's been your taxpayer dollars funding some of this stuff. And the creationist, I'm like, why am I getting criticized? You ought to be excited. And I'll just share this in a forum, and I get shot down. I'm like, I'm kind of done with you guys.
I mean, the reason for that, you would say, is fallen people being fallen people. I would say it's monkeys being monkeys. And at the end of the day, I feel like we're describing the same basic social interactions. I am I love you bringing up the heat problem of that. I don't do much nuclear physics. I teach a class in nuclear physics, and that is about all I do. Nuclear physics.
That's wonderful.
Very hard. My contribution, I don't know if did I share this with you. So my contribution to trying to get something of this community of people working, let's not say love, because maybe that just sounds weird, but in friendship, in collaboration across this particular divide together, is a series of contests that I'm going to run as part of Science is Weird, the company that I do, but 2 of the 3 contests are open to everybody. I'm showing right now my screen on my iPad, which links to my blog, The Lost Tools of Learning, which are at losttools.org. And then I had this post, A Fossil Hunt to End the Culture War, which I don't know. I did an okay job of it. And I'm doing 3 different, I did an interview with a noted flat earther a couple of years ago. That was a trip. I love polystrate trees. I am in love with polystrate trees. But I'm doing these 3 contests The first one, because of some legal issues of the worries of people just smashing rocks that don't belong to them to find fossils, is only open to people who I'm working with right now. So please ignore that one. But the ones that might interest your viewers are, we'll be doing $100 contest where we invite anybody to make the best case for a worldwide flood, which is to say, to find the best piece of physical evidence. So polystrate trees, right? Could be it. And then to explain it, to upload it as a YouTube short, and then we have a panel of people. We're still developing a panel of people, but we have a few people on it already. And hopefully including at least one young Earth creationist, to adjudicate like what actually makes the best argument for this, and then to give that person $100. Note that like I'm not anticipating that I will be like convinced by this like one best piece of evidence, but like I'm willing to give $100 to somebody to do like to try to figure that out. So then I can take that and make a good response video, like and not like a mean response video, but like, okay, like here's how I interpret this or whatever. And then another one, which I'm really interested in, which I'd like to get your thoughts on. Make the best model for a flood. Specifically, like why do we find the fossils that we find in the places that we find them? Which to me is the thing that really has convinced me that, like whatever else I think about the theory of evolution or what have you, the fact that you find fossils, right? Cenozoic fossils in the Cenozoic, and Mesozoic in the Mesozoic, and Paleozoic in the Paleozoic, right? Like, man, like I would love to see the flood model that tells us why we should expect to see those things, and why, like, when the next T-Rex fossil is found, dollars to donuts, it's going to be in the late Cretaceous, in the Maastrichtian, or maybe in like the one that's right before it, or maybe it'd be really cool, right, if it survived the KPG, or whatever we're calling it now, extinction event, right? But a moment beyond that. We're not going to find them in the Jurassic. We're not going to find them anywhere in the Ordovician or anything like that. So that's the second contest that I'm doing. So here we have exactly 1 minute left before my wife is going to be angry at me that I broke my promise to her.
Well, we can continue the conversation.
I would love that.
If you wanted to hear my thoughts on all of this,
I would love that.
Which I'd be happy to share that. And the first thing to do would be, after this session is over, we have to figure out how I'm going to transmit my recording to you so you can post it on your channels as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you like what we did, I'd be happy to continue the conversation, and you can get my take on more of the specifics of your questions.
I would love that. Both of those things.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Likewise. So I think this is productive, and I hope I've been of service to you. And,
you have.
And maybe we can. I think there are. If you've seen some of my shows, you'll actually see where I've entertained opposing viewpoints, and was very grateful for the criticism and saying, "Sal, that wasn't correct." And I'm like, "Thank you, you saved me." And there is self-interest in not making mistakes. I mean, I wish people would just like have that attitude. Look, you make a mistake, you get it caught early, you ought to be grateful. So anyway, we'll stay in touch. I just sent you an email, and I'd look forward to having another session like this.
Me too. Thank you.
All right. Well, take care. And let me just stop the recording, and we can have a couple more remarks. I just have to figure out how to do this. Let's see. End recording. All right, guys. Take care.